Davey.
Thank you very much, and I thank and appreciate Senator Wong for attending and giving that explanation. However, it is not satisfactory. One of the most obvious changes since the Albanese government came to power 18 months ago is how far we have come from having an open, transparent and accountable government. We have seen it in the way this government has gone about ignoring OPDs, not just mine, but others in the chamber. The amount of times that we have senators rise to complain about the failure to comply with an order of production of documents is numerous. We have seen it in the way this government has gone about ignoring those on the front line, whether it be irrigation communities, pharmacists, West Australian farmers on banning live exports, motor dealers in their rushed and hurried and now backflipped fuel efficiency standards, and the absolute contempt this government has for this chamber. We need to look no further than the Minister for Water, whose refusal to engage with farming organisations and their communities in the Murray-Darling Basin is highlighted by her Twitter feed, which shows she has only been in the basin a handful of times, although credit to the Minister for the Environment, who is in charge of recycling. She is very adept at recycling photos on that Twitter feed, replaying, "Look at me, I flew over the basin, here's me looking poignantly out the window of my aircraft." She's recycled that a few times. The lack of time she has actually spent on the ground has well and truly been noted. And the Minister for Water's lack of interest in engaging in basin communities is now being mimicked by her own department, who should hang their heads in shame. To claim a webinar and a web survey is extensive consultation is an absolute slap in the face for communities who, while being full of consultation fatigue, will not walk away from the table where it comes to their livelihoods and their well-beings. And I guess the department thinks that their current propaganda campaign of lies that is currently playing on television—
Senator Davey, withdraw.
Sorry, I withdraw. Their current campaign of television advertisements is tantamount to a public education campaign where it couldn't be further from the truth. To put the volume of water that the government is planning to buy back in context, it is more than all the water left for irrigation in South Australia, Sunraysia and the Victorian Murray GMID altogether. If the water was to be bought out of these regions, their economies would be wiped out and Australians would be faced with massive increases in the cost of food. And that is why I am so interested. That is why we have asked for these documents. The failure of the minister to release any information on how the government's water policies and legislation will impact these communities and how they came to some of the figures, and the failure of any information about what the cost of the government's policy is deplorable. The Senate inquiry into the Water Amendment Bill was a farce, with the department tasked with implementing the bill refusing to say which communities will be at the forefront of providing the 450 gigalitres of additional water, what the environmental purposes of that water will be, how much recovering that water will cost, and what the impact will be on taxpayers and communities into the future. We hope that the government has actually done the work to have that information, but we don't know. This is not the first rodeo when it comes to the Minister for Environment and Water ignoring the wishes of the Senate, and the failure to comply with the Senate and produce the documents as requested by these OPDs is just a repeat of past efforts. Last year we had the absurd situation where the government deliberately and repeatedly withheld documents from the Senate through Senate motions 318 and 319. And then the government couldn't even get its story straight as to why it couldn't comply. At first it was said because there was over 1.8 million documents That was revised when then it was claimed there were only 850,000 documents. But it does beg the question as to why the 459 staff at the Murray-Darling Basin Authority, plus the staff at the department, have been so busy producing what could be about 1.5 documents per hour since the Albanese government came to power on this topic alone. Sorry, per hour per staff member. I mean, really, I wish that would be very efficient if that's how much they were producing, or you could say non-efficient, because what else are they doing? They're meant to be modelling. They're meant to be conducting reviews. They're meant to be providing fair and frank advice. The final insult was that they only, of the 1.8 million claimed documents, they only produced 37. And that is why we had the follow-up OPDs, 455, 456 and 457. I acknowledge that 455 and 456 have only been tabled today. They were due yesterday. I'm now told they were tabled today. There has not been enough time for me to go through them. 457 we are still waiting on. As a result of the minister's failure again to comply with Senate orders, as we are seeing again, the complete incompetence of this government and the complete disregard of this government to this chamber. I don't want to see any senior bureaucrats bullied or reduced to tears, but I would respectfully ask that the water bureaucrats improve their productivity, not to take over 2 months to pull together a handful of emails and documents. And if it's more than a handful, then you have to ask why. That is why, on our side, we look at efficiency dividends. As for the minister, her desire for secrecy and lack of transparency, which is now commonplace among this government — we know this is the government of non-disclosure agreements. We know that this government likes to do consultations behind closed doors, with the heavy-handedness of people who breach the confidence, which is not the open and transparent government that we were promised prior to the election. It is time the Minister for the Environment and Water directed her department to step away from the keyboard, release the information the Senate has requested, and then get out into the communities to do proper consultation on the implementation of the remainder of the Basin Plan, which is what communities are crying out for. We cannot allow this government to continue to ignore the wishes of communities or the wishes of this Senate. Thank you.